All right, everyone, welcome back to the Be Fit podcast. I'm your host, Connor Murphy, joined here with Dave Bergeron, COO of Everybody Fights, your favorite. I mean, I was going to try to label the gym as one thing, but it does everything.
It does just about everything. I mean, our biggest thing is just having fun, providing fitness for everybody, just enjoying ourselves. And for us, I just want to enjoy as much as I can, and so does our team.
And I've joined him before at these Tuesday, Thursday morning classes. They're not actually official classes on the schedule. There's people still getting the gym ready when we go in there. But he's got this group of people that are so committed to training at 5 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And these are like the shit talking people that are just chirping each other the whole time. Such an amazing, it's the only time you can get this is when you truly care about working out and your people, because it's not something where you're like, oh, here's going to be the main money maker. It's like, hey, we're going to hold each other accountable. And it's amazing what you've garnered there. I mean, if that just kind of speaks volumes to everything that happens at EBF. But I'd love to hear how it all started. What was what is the baseline for it and your role and how it got to where it is now?
Yeah, I mean, it started back in 2013. I was approached by a gentleman named Anthony Rich, who was one of the original founders. And I was working at a company called Bodyscapes at the time down in Brookline, and I was just opening clubs on a regular basis for them. And then it transitioned where AJ was like, hey, I'm very interested in bringing you on board and, coming on as kind of a director of operations. From there, I helped them kind of build out what the business was going to be with George Foreman III. And we just grew and we kind of took it to the next level. And our vision was pretty simple. It was really simple to understand. We had a goal of providing boxing fitness to everybody, but providing everybody a value. So when you came into our four walls, we wanted you never to have to go somewhere else. We didn't want you to go somewhere else for yoga. We didn't want you to go somewhere else for strength training. We wanted you to have everything under one roof. And that was our goal. From there, it really kind of transformed post-COVID. It's me. I took the reins with a few other gentlemen, and we were like, how do we level up? How do we actually now take what in this new world with recovery, how do we handle a little bit more of that balance and provide more? Hence, when the Reebok spot came up, we were like, let's go in. We dived in both feet and we say well, we're in. Let's have some fun with it.
Yeah. Now, your role, what was the company you were at beforehand? You just said?
Company called Bodyscapes, and then prior to that was a company called FitCorp.
So with those, you said you were opening clubs. What was the role for that?
So I was a general manager, then a director of operation, kind of leveled up in that direction. I've always, though, was a trainer. My degree was in movement science at Westfield State, and then as well as I got a degree in physical education. And so I came out and was like, I'm going to be a trainer. And that's what I wanted to do. And then after about 6-7 months of just being a trainer, I was like, I think I can manage this thing. I think I can do some cool stuff, and I think I can level up the brand and kind of take it to a whole nother level. And in that process, I just learned so much from so many other people around me. Learned what I wanted to do versus what I didn't want to do. And I just kind of transitioned. And with Bodyscapes, I was able to open and kind of rehab 2 or 3 clubs, take a bunch of cash, dump it back in, turn it into what I believe it needs to be. Okay,
so that kind of set you up from the business side to kind of create your role at EBF, which was, I don't even know, I go to your gym all the time and I don't know even to list all of the options. What did it kind of start as and how much have you expanded? If someone's like, what's an EBF? What are the things and the products that you provide there?
I mean, there's a lot. I think when we first started day one, we actually had a product was actually called Box Fit, day one on Everybody Fights. And we had actually 2 brands. We had the Club by George Foreman III, and then we also had Everybody Fights. About 3 years in, we realized I can't really run with 2 different brands. They're competing against each other. And our main style class was called Box Fit. And it was really a 360 approach to fitness. It had 4 stations of boxing, 4 stations of mobility, flexibility, and then 4 stations of strength. And that was where it kind of took off to, which was really cool to in the fundamental side of it. But we realized that there was a craving or a hunger for dominating strength circuit, right? We realized there was a craving or hunger for a circuit base that everybody could go ahead and do. And our theory or our thought process is that, a 16-year-old person could go ahead and work out with a 95-year-old person side by side in the same exact workout because of the design of the programs that we were putting together. And there could be camaraderie, there could be community built because it didn't really matter about your abilities. It just mattered, are you willing to put the work in? And your best is equal to the person to the left and to your right of you.
Makes sense. I mean, that's scalability. And once you can do that, it's the hardest thing to convince someone that doesn't understand it to do. And they're like, no, I can't do that. And they're like, no, you can. And then once you get them in your gym, it's like, then they understand it. But you guys also have like pro fighters. You guys have like a separate thing. I mean, I go in there and I'm like, I'm going to mess with that guy.
Yeah, it's fun. And I think, over the years it's definitely changed. And I think, we have a group about, I'd say it ranges from 12 to about 20 different pro fighters, from the amateur base to probably about 12 really solid pro fighters. Guys that are like 18-0, 19-0. They're competing on the top of the ranks. We have a couple guys that are, on ESPN on a regular basis, fighting at 23-1, 23-2 type situations. And it's fun. It gets the brand right out there. But really what I like it is that like we can be pros in about 6 different domains. And that's like fitness domains is where I like to kind of call that, where it's circuit-based training, cycling, you can get into yoga, you can get into recovery, you can get into the strength modalities, you can get into a lot of these different things, as well as the boxing. And we can really shine in each individual category, but at the same point, be available for everybody and anybody that is going to want to go ahead and want fitness at a price that's available to them.
Yeah. I think that the word willing is usually that piece. It's like, hey, this, anyone can do it, but it's not for everyone because It's going to be for that. It's like you've got to be willing and open for the.
You do, and I think that's a very interesting piece, right? To be willing to take that first step, right? You want to be consistent, you want to strive, but you gotta anything that you're going to be successful in this life is going to challenge you, and you have to be willing to kind of take that first step into the unknown and have that what I call blind confidence, right? It's like I have friends, I have people that are interested in doing this, but that blind confidence provides so much. And I would challenge just about anybody that's out there in any type of fitness or anything in this world. Take that blind step. That first step is everything for you. And when you do take that step, really cool stuff unlocks. And it's honestly it's been a game changer in my life where I did not know where I was going 98% of the time. And I was like, no, just one step in front of the other. One step in front of the other, find a way.
Yeah. We've talked about, so now kind of the offerings, the business side of it, but something that you and I, obviously something that I really value in our friendship and our relationship is how much we value the people that are working for you and the trainers. And what role do they play in Everybody Fights as a business and in life in general?
I think to put it in words, it's challenging, but I will say that they're everything. They're everything that holds up they're the pillars of the business. They're the love of the every person that walks in to and from our four walls understands and values and puts back into it. Most of the time, trainers in the industry, they're not doing this full time. They have a full-time other job, and they do this as what I call throwing salt and pepper onto it, right? It's the flavoring of their day. It makes them feel alive on their day-to-day basis when they're trying to figure out how to go ahead and really what makes them feel alive. By giving back, they're able to, with our community, find a place that they can consider home, which I find the most beautiful thing. But our trainers, what we really do well with, where I think separates us from a lot of other businesses, is that a trainer can come in and teach multiple classes within a segment of time, where typical businesses that have one studio can only teach one class, and then it would turn over to somebody else, and you wouldn't really have them back to back. Or our trainers can come in, do personal training. They can come in and teach 2 or 3 classes in 4 or 5 different modalities, right? Which then makes them more well-rounded, but also then comes into some of these other fractions. We educate our teams, we develop them, we want the best for them. I always tell, all my team, I want you to be the best version of yourself when you walk out of my doors. One day, whether for the good or bad, I just want to see you just advance yourself to a different level. And that recently just happened. Literally yesterday, a girl that I brought on 3 years ago for the front desk, she left the nannying position and she was lost. She had no clue where she wants. And I was like, trust me, we're going to give you a chance. We're going to run through things. If you give me everything, I can educate you. If you show me character that you can drive and you're willing to fight for something, I was like, I'll give you opportunity. And now I get to sit here 3 years forward, right? And she's left our company and is leveled up herself and is now succeeding in a different role that I don't think she could even put herself in before, thinking that she would be there. That's what I love, both from a member side as well as from a staffing side. Like, that is huge for me. Just seeing people succeed in this world, I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah. How do you find people like that? How do you find someone, or what is like the potential? Because I know there's a lot of people, and I try to speak to the baseline, right? I try to speak to something low where someone's like, hey, I'm kind of interested in training. What is it? What are the things that you look for? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things that you could point out that you want to avoid, but what are those things? Maybe those like intangible things.
I think I always go back to character. I think character in this world is more valuable in a lot of ways than somebody's resume. To me, at least, if they have the essential skill sets to go ahead and the want to drive, they're not looking at the clock, they're not caring about what the clock says. They're naturally, like, the inherent natural skill set is to want to talk to people, to be friendly, to be open. Their body language is always like open and kind of charismatic and relaxed. That's the type of thing I'm looking for in people on a regular basis. Now, everybody's like nervous and changes and modifies in that, but those things can be taught or rounded out. Like, you can round out edges in a lot of ways. But that's what I really dive into. When I take a look at somebody's resume and I look at their resume and their capabilities, I'm sure they have skill sets. They came from X college. They have this certification. They have that, right? That's great. But like, ultimately, like, I'm going to look at how long did you spend in college? How long did you spend at your last job? How long have you suffered to get to where you are, right? Those are the things that tell me a lot about that person, because I'm not going to invest 6 months of my time to build you, to watch you walk out the door, and I'm hoping you have the best, but I want to make sure I can have that chance to make you into something special for yourself.
And what are the, we talk about like certifications, like you're not hiring on certifications. I'm sure also with a professional development program, you're like, hey, we can provide those.
Yeah.
And maybe with a better attitude to attain more from it. But what are some of the ways, I'm curious, that you work on training people? Because it's, there's a vibe in your gym, and there are those people that are radiant. And I think about the coaches that I know that have always been coaches there since I've known them, and people who haven't and then started working there. And it's like, it's definitely like it accentuates that type of personality. So it's like, is it just a culture thing, or is there something where you like put someone in a machine and shake them up and then they're radiant afterwards?
It's interesting. 10 years ago, asking me that question is so different than today in this world. It's funny, I tell people I was never a person that's full of energy running around a room kind of blowing it up, but that's who I am in the process of teaching. I always say it's your alter ego. It's your opportunity to be on stage. It's wearing a cape. Nothing can bother you. Just have fun. And if you can have fun and enjoy yourself, some real cool things can go on. And that's what I've found. In today's world, what I find is like, lose the chains. Like, the education's there. You're mundane. No one knows what you're going to do in front of you, right? No one has any idea of that class of 50, 100, 150 in front of you. They don't know what you're going to do. They showed up for you. They showed up for you because they woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning to drive 20 minutes, to deal with parking, to spend $35 or $40 in a visit to spend time with you at that hour instead of sitting down on their couch having a cup of coffee or hitting snooze. When you calibrate that, when you put that into situation, that to me levels you up. That levels you up and kind of puts you in that superhero mode. And that's why I say, put on the cape, blast the music that hypes you up. It's your energy. And it's our curriculum, it's our programming. But I still want you to modify and turn it into you. Like, it's yours. It's your aspect. It's your class. It's what you can accomplish. That to me provides that availability for people. And that's where I think we win.
Talked about on trainers. I'm curious your take. Who are your favorite members? And not like, hey, this name, don't like this person, but like, what's your favorite type of member that's going to come in the gym? Who do you think where you're like, hey, we like to have you guys in there? Because the members are also a part of the culture.
100%. The members make the foundation, that work, right? That my favorite type of member is, realistically, my favorite type of member is not the person that on paper you would think would be the member, right? On paper, that person is like that full of energy. You change their life, you change their thought process on fitness. You made them so much more welcoming to that. That person is my favorite member, right? Because ideally, like, I do want to change every human that walks through our door in a fitness aspect, but more of a mental aspect, right? With that terminology of everybody fights, it really comes back to, I want to change who you are, and I want you to teach you to fight for something and realize that literally you can just push forward. But my member that's my favorite is somebody that doesn't come in and is unsure of that, really doesn't understand that, right? Yeah. But they leave every day being like, wow, you changed my day. Like, that's my favorite member. Like, when they reach out to you, whether it's a DM, an email, any of these things, and they're able to say like, hey, like, because of you, this is how I'm feeling today. That's my favorite member of all time. And because it just, like, that one change you did to that one member is actually going to travel in so many directions. That person's going to leave a positive imprint on somebody else's life that day. And hopefully that just echoes across everything you got going on. And that's my hope, right? Yeah. And those are 100% my favorite members outside of, like, people you can just be real with. And I think that's, like, when you talk about my Tuesday, Thursday morning, like, the group of people that just get their butts kicked and enjoy it, right? And it's not even a class. It's just, 5 a.m. in the morning, kind of getting the workout in. It's my workout. I tell people, like, you're just doing my workout with me. And it's like, that's what it is. Those are the people, to me, like, you can be yourself. You can have that fun. You can sweat. And it doesn't matter if you believe, if you're right, you're left, you're sexist, not sexist, all that out the window. It's like, we're all sweating. We're all sweating. We're all getting a great workout in, and we're all doing the same thing. And that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. I see it as a fellow trainer. When you have that person, it's like, I don't think they realize the unconscious ability that they give to their trainers by giving them that feedback. It's like, they're like, oh my gosh, there's someone just, like, right behind us, a guy that I train with, and you get those daily or weekly messages about all these different things, and it's like, that's what gives me more power. Now it's like I'm giving something to you, you're powering it back. It's like, it is how I describe it. It's like, it's selfish. I do a lot of this stuff, and when I get those things back, or someone's like, you helped me lose 50 pounds. It's like, I didn't do anything. You did all the work. Sure, yeah. I shepherded your journey, prodded you a little bit in certain areas, but it's the best feeling. And it is that it's worth its weight in gold. It's like this pure currency in that.
It's honestly so beautiful in that, to what you're stating, is that it's amazing being able to spend that kind of time with those people and then giving you that feedback. And it just literally takes you from wherever position you are that day, and it can level you up to here. Yeah. And, like, you could be having a bad day for whatever the reason is, right? And then all of a sudden you just get a message like that. And that, I always call it, like, it's that one drop of raindrop and the ripple effect. Like, that ripple effect just kind of can change so many people's lives. And we're blessed to be able to have that with the community that we're in.
Yeah, you see it in spades when you go in there, and it's from the membership base to the coaches. And as you always say, to quote, remember the Titans, attitude reflects leadership.
Yep.
And when you see it when it's done really well, you see it even more evidently when it's done really poorly. Mm-hmm. And they have that, like, toxic environment where the first thing that happens when someone walks in the gym is, something negative. Oh, this coach didn't do this or that. And it's like, whoa, they may not have that participant, that member may not have that same experience. Yeah. And so it's just cool to see from, an outsider, not an everyday member of your gym, but when I go in there, is to see that stuff. It's like, that's energy. And even if I'm not seeing the direct stuff in there, I leave EBF and I'm like, they just got that energy in there. It's contagious.
It's a lot of fun, and I think there's a joy. Like I was saying to somebody else, like, you got to find your passion in life. And I'm blessed. And I think I can say the same thing to you, is that I don't wake up every day thinking about hitting the snooze. I wake up excited to go and attack the day, and I'm thrilled to spend the time with the people I have a chance to spend the time with. And during my day, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have that passion and eagerness to show up to your day-to-day job.
So if there's an advice to this person, let's say we have our all-star members, what is like the approaching attitude? Like you're walking in the gym, you're walking into EBF for the first time. Let's see, you're doing like like a trained strength class, whatever like a big format class is.
Sure.
What would be a good way to be like, all right, here's my attitude. It's my first time in here. This is what I should go into expecting, and to be able to become that like all-star member.
I think the biggest thing that I would tell anybody from start to finish, the attitude you'd really want to have is an open mind. Don't come in with expectations of like what you're going to do or what you're not going to do, but come in excited and come in knowing that you're welcomed and you're part of you're immediately going to feel part of a family. Like it's a very unique environment in that way, where it's like the minute you walk in, you're treated with respect, you're treated with love. There is gratitude for you even stepping in the door, right? Because it takes a lot of courage in that. I mean, I would think about if I was an outside looking in and I was going to step into a business called Everybody Fights. I'm like, am I going to get punched in the face? Like that would be
first thing you walk in there, hands up.
Exactly, hands up, boom, like that. And it's funny, but at the same point, you come in and you're greeted by these people smiling at you. And I always talk about like the owner of Starbucks is like, what do you look for in an employee? And I'm like, smiling. I just want to make sure they can smile. In a lot of ways, we talk about our five senses, like in my business, and we want to attain those five senses start to finish, both within class and within our customer service. So a lot of the stuff that I would say to them is like, I would hope that you would leave yourself open to experience everything and anything that our four walls would provide. And then just be welcome to anybody that's around you. Don't have your guard up. Don't have your guard up. And I would equally say that with anything and everything you had a chance to experience in life.
Yeah.
Because when we do walk into anything in this world and we have our guard up, we are setting up failure for ourselves and for our future selves. And the more that we can branch off and find friends and new people that we want to connect to and talk to, the more we get to grow as individuals. And I think that is a lot of what I always believe is missing in this world, is that ability to kind of step into the unknown and be open to new friends, new people, exciting opportunities. I've seen so much great things happen inside my four walls. I've heard so many great things happen in other people's fitness experiences, whether that's marriages, dates, family, etc., best friends that came out of it. That's the stuff that excites me.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to like hear and feel the passion of your coaches and the experience. I know we've talked about just how many cool people there are in this space, in the fitness and training space. Do you have like a standout story where something, either one of your trainers or a trainer you know had done something with an athlete that it's just like, hey, I want to give this a shot? I know we didn't rehearse any of this, but I just love any of these stories because it fires me up, and I also can steal other people's ideas and then take them for my own.
It's funny. I do look back at a lot of things over the years and seeing some great athletes come through our four walls, but also I think the stories that blow my mind are the ones of the first timers coming inside of our doors and people just having that immediate experience of that. I'll call him out, so I have no problem with this. Michael Brady, I think a close friend of yours, close friend of mine. 2018, 2019 became part of my business, and he was just a legend in so many ways and probably one of the most welcoming humans I've ever met. And I watched him teach a class when he told me 2 years prior, he's like, I'm not an instructor. He goes, I'm just a personal trainer. I have no interest in being a teacher. And then 2 years forward, he's in there instructing classes, and I'm watching him with a first timer that was just like so excited, trying to go ahead in a place to lose weight, to like really get motivated in a lot of directions, and just watching that transition over 6 months of like what he provided for confidence in this person and where that person went to day in, day out by just showing some attention, showing some love and respect to a person who was completely just would have been like, if they jumped on a spin bike or did something else, if somebody didn't give them a little bit of that love, a little bit of that gratitude in that direction, I think probably never would have made it back and probably would have stayed away from fitness completely, right? Because that's where that is. So from an athlete standpoint, so looking at a great instructor, Michael James, like he blows my mind with that. Yeah. He always blows my mind with that. And I'm always kind of admire people that can take that kind of approach, that unique feel and touch. It's beautiful to me.
Isn't it wild the impact that you can have on someone's life with just like a little extra care in like a workout routine?
It is amazing, and I echo that in so many ways. It is wild that you can spend those little times, make small little comments, give them that little bit of attention, and then after that class, just be like, "Hey, that was amazing, great work today." And like those small things are going to echo in that person's head for the rest of that day. That's like. I mean, I always say to like my son and my daughter and my family, like I remind them all the time that I love them, that I appreciate them, that I have nothing but gratitude to allow me to do the things that I want to go ahead and do. And I think that needs to be said more often. I think we need to be reminded when it's appropriate, but reminded in this world, we need to remind more people of it.
Yeah, those little things too. I know for me, and maybe it's in a gym setting or outside of it, but someone who takes the time after a hangout session and sends you just a text message being like, it was really great this. And 2 years down the road, they were like, we were hanging out one time and you had said that you had noticed the progress that I had made here. And you were like, I don't even remember saying that because it was just such an obvious thing. It was like,
yeah,
hey man, this is looking really good. You don't know how much time or effort or their insecurities around that now it's like that's that thing. When you say like the rest of the day, I mean, I'm sure it happens for weeks, months, even years for some people, just that little extra effort.
Dude, it is by far the coolest thing that I say. Like fitness professionals have the capability to literally take somebody going down a road, right, and pivot them in the right direction, or can do the opposite. And I think we have more power in that realm than we actually give ourselves credit for. And why it's so important that we are, pinnacle like units in this world of like creating success for the everyday human. Because you just don't know where that person is, whether they came to you for the first time when they're 40, 50, 60, 21, the change that you can make in that person's for the rest of their life. I mean, there was massive change for me. I mean, we could sit here and talk about, how we each grew up, and I'm sure somebody within fitness, sport, made us go in this direction, right? Made us go in the direction we have gone into. I mean, definitely that's for me. So it's like those beautiful moments of somebody being like, hey, you're pretty talented in this, or not on the other side. I've been like in school, I'm like, hey, you got an F on reading, in third grade. Like, that's not going to motivate me. But like somebody comes to you on the other side of it's like in fitness, like, hey, like you're quite an athlete. Like we should throw you in cross country, or we should throw you in this. That is our opportunity in life, right? The environmental factors that we can be really strong pillars in that.
Who's the best coach you've had, and not necessarily that worked for your gym, but who was in your childhood growing up, or even if it's just like, maybe it's not a best, but who were some of the coaches who did positively impact you? And what were they like?
I mean, it's I would say like one that comes to mind right away would be Ken LaChapelle. He is the head football coach over at Northbridge High. I think he just had his 400th plus win as a head football coach, which is insane, I find. But one of the things that I learned from him was like, he just basically said, he goes, as long as you give me 100% and you show up every day, I'll give you opportunity. And it wasn't anything else. And I know he was really tough. And I remember him always saying, he's like, you're not the best athlete I've ever seen. And I remember him just being straight and honest with me. And I was like, but then I said to myself, it leaves me an opportunity to be the hardest worker you've ever seen. Like that's how I always looked at it. And that has like changed who I am on my day to day of like trying to be the hardest worker in every room. Like that's what it is. Showing up early, doing the appropriate things, doing the appropriate studying, understanding the readings that you need to go and do. All of those things were really important. So I'd call out Ken LaChapelle. I think he's, was a very impact. I mean, he was my school's physical education teacher, also athletic director. And what I go to school for? Physical education, gives that breakdown of like what is. So it does correlate. It 100% comes back in full direction. And there's definitely a lot of other people that have been in the mix, of that. But it typically always, I would say, that strong, masculine individual that would driven points on goals. Let's say, stay consistent, keep moving forward, don't get beat up. Don't get beat up. You're going to have your down days. You're going to have your up days. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. But just keep moving. And that was like, what I've learned over the years. And same thing in business now. I keep that same mindset. I'm like, I'm going to have my highs. I'm going to have my lows. But just remember to like keep that sail moving forward and have fun with it when you can.
That's awesome. 400 wins. I just think about like 400 of anything.
Exactly.
So I probably blinked 400 times since I started this thing, but it's just like, I don't know, that much. You have to be doing something right to have that level of success. Like there are statistics you can throw out there that tells me about, someone. I always think about this when you can see a fitness model, you can see a body type, you can see whatever, like the bikini model, like you can see a lot of that stuff and you're like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. But if you can tell me, if you say, hey, this woman right here can do 30 unbroken strict pull-ups, I'm like, that didn't happen by chance.
No.
She didn't catch a good angle in the lighting and that stuff, or she didn't have this, or like the eating disorders or diet stuff and stuff. Like this woman is working. And you hear those type of statistics and it's like, okay, that's the person I want on my team.
Yes. That work, that's like, I love that when you see people like achieve these in your head, almost unbreakable, like you can't even get them to that place. And it's really, really cool to kind of look at that. Like, it's like, and I say that, like unbroken pull-ups. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. I'm like, cheers to you, like 100%. Like, or when I think I saw somebody at Reebok back when I was doing my first walkthroughs, and she was throwing a 125-pound sandbag over her shoulder for reps. And I'm like, nope, I'm good. Like, my time's done doing that. But like, I was like so impressed. I just sat there and been like, cool. And that's why sometimes with the CrossFit Games and you're watching that stuff and you see those amazing athletes and you're like, that's amazing. Like, that is amazing to watch and to understand the strength, the physicality, the conditioning that comes into play.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
that didn't happen on accident.
No. And it's like, one, that didn't happen on accident. And that was 5-6 years of like hard training to even get to the place they are. Yeah. And by the time they are, they're just machines here, and then physically machines, which is unbelievable to watch.
Yeah. Just I love like stats, like numbers and objectivity in fitness is just such like a cool thing. You hear like mile times and average mile per high level marathon, and you're like, that doesn't make sense to me. I can't run 100 meters as fast as I can in that same time. And they did it over 100, over 400 times for a marathon.
Yeah. Well, that's what breaks me. And I laugh about it. I was a track and field athlete, and my best open 400 was probably a 54 seconds, right? One lap around the track. And these guys are running sub 50s on a regular basis for 26.2 miles. And I'm just kind of like, how? Yeah. Like, how? Like, I'm seeing blue at the end of that 400. And that was when I was in college.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do that now.
The distance between the Earth and the moon makes more sense to me than someone being able to do that.
It's shocking. And when, like, the coolest thing for me about sport, right, is I love kinesiology. Like, I love, like, you love facts. I love science. I like understanding why the human body can work the way it does, understanding loads and unloads. I love, that's one of my biggest things I love about still doing personal training. Like, in my day-to-day, I still train 3 to 4 clients a day, because I get to look at the human body and make decisions on how it's fundamentally working or not working, find resolutions for people to help them. Like one of my good buddies, 6 years old, just goes to his physical. He's like, 7 years ago, this is what my physical is. This is where it is now. And he's like light years back to where it is. That's cool. Like, that's like facts. That's cool. And it's like, hey, by the way, we did this because we were able to put more muscle mass, change your diet, recognize a lot of things that's in your blood that we needed some adaptation, some changes. And by the way, we made you have more fun. Like, we made you have more fun and live this life.
Kind of keeps you going in some sense. There are some psychopaths that will like bury themselves into the ground, solo training, and be able to do that for a long time. But having a good time is definitely a part of it.
It's so important. I mean, to be able to put a smile on your face day in, day out, train, put the work in, do the things that are necessary there, it's essential. It's essential. And without it, I think people lose their purpose. I honestly do. I think people eventually lose their purpose because it does become mundane. It does become ritual. And when that happens, I think you lose your why.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I never really wanted to press on this, but we talked about good coaches in your life. What's been the worst coach? Or maybe not call them out by name. I would do it for me because I don't care. But just traits of it. So like avenues to avoid going down that some people might think is the way to go. but maybe just for you, and obviously it could be different. This is more subjective, like depending on the athlete. But what are some of the traits about people that it's like, hey, maybe this isn't what we want to do for garnering fitness and garnering adaptation, either between the ears or physically?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that's out there, right? And again, it always is the eyes of the beholder on that, in my opinion. But myself as a coach, and when I'm working with my trainers and I'm working with my team and I want to kind of motivate them, the biggest thing is understanding appropriate feedback for the age category that you're in or the skill level that you're at. That was like, God bless, I had the availability to learn a lot of this within physical education, because you're teaching kids in different age categories, different sexes, all the way from like elementary onward, and you learn different skills, right? And you learn different skills and what appropriate feedback is necessary versus what's not. The worst coaches I've had have no training in that area, right? And they are constantly either stimulating people with cues, and therefore there's nothing being connected. I always say to people like 2 to 3 cues max, and then that should be an adapt up or adapt down, but like stay at the lowest. But you're gonna have 20% of people that you can adapt up, and you have 20% of people adapting down if you need to like really advance them. That's like the worst coaches I've ever met. Just overstimulate people, and then they don't know how to read body language, or they don't understand either read the room or read the situation. And they go to their essential resort or their back-end resort that's worked for them, what motivated them, which doesn't necessarily mean it motivated the person in front of them, where it can be like drill sergeant based, or it could be sarcasm, or it could be like, hey, like, you just don't belong here. Like, time to leave, like get up out of this room. And I remember, I think this must have been probably 13, 14 years ago. I was like, I loved Baptiste yoga, and I was in Brooklyn. I used to do that, and I used to love that. And one of my buddies was like, hey, come with me to Bikram. And I was like, all right, yeah, sure. It's hot yoga. It can't be anything different. Sat me in the front of the room, and this lady, I went, she said right, and I went left. I followed her, and she called me on the front of the middle of class. And I'm like with 40 other people, and I was like, embarrassed, like there was no tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, I'll never come back here again. Like, not happening. Not a welcoming atmosphere. Like, and that's a piece, like being called out and not feeling welcomed. That's a bad coach. Like in general, it's just not a place you want to be.
Yeah. Like think back to certain coaches, but I think that a part that I really resonate with there is the ability to read people. Hey, when can you put someone on the gas pedal a little bit? Or when can you be like, hey, you're resting right now. This is great. Rest and then you get back at whatever the situation is. But just being able to read people and not thinking that like I know what's best for this person, I think is a skill that you're right. If you don't have that, you could get lucky a lot of times. Yes. You can get lucky by throwing the stuff out there that works. But is there a way to teach that? Is there a way to? Or is it just an awareness? Like you said, you worked from kindergarten through high school. Yeah. You're gonna realize you have to deal with those people differently, because when you say, for the seniors in high school, when you tell them to get organized, it's going to be a lot different than the kindergartners. And
yeah, I think that's like always, and even with the seniors, if you even took a group of seniors, right, and you're like, hey, we're going to go ahead and play basketball, you're going to have beginners and you're going to have advanced users, right? And your feedback to beginners versus the advanced are massively different, right? And the cueing and the breakdown, the different skill sets you're going to work them through, right? The different games you would have them play are always completely different. But, excuse me, one of the biggest things that I guess that I would kind of verge to go ahead and say is the process of learning how to make mistakes, own your mistakes by falling on the sword, and then apologizing and then creating systems to help you not do that again, or help you find your way to like identify the room better, right? And a lot of times I find great coaches, their ego trumps everything. And so sometimes their ego overflows. And I think that's a hard place for all of us, because we got to live on a high. And so you really want to there. But if the ego gets too high and collapses that ceiling, you're in a lot of problems, and you got to be super careful. So it's balancing that ego, but also balancing your floor. And so you have to be able to take general feedback and pull feedback from around you. And when you pull feedback from around you and see the room, identify smiling faces, body language, all those things that are necessary, you can make small tweaks within your moments, but also at the end of your class later on that week, you can also make tweaks of like what's going on. And that's where I always say consistent mentorship is key. Like it doesn't matter what tier, what level you're at, finding somebody that is doing it better than you and being able to sit down and have a time in the room, just having conversation, working out side by side, all of those things matter. Every single one of those things matter. And I think that's what gets a person from like really that tier 2, high energy, they know their stuff, to then that tier 3 of like, I'm one of the best at what I do.
Yeah. I think that feedback is such an important thing. And from the from the background with working at CrossFit, it's like nothing you do is ever not being evaluated. Mm-hmm. And it is, at first, you're like, it'd be really great to just run this small breakout group without someone having to tell me something afterwards. But you realize that it's not coming from a place of what you're doing wrong, but it gets that atmosphere set from the beginning.
Yep.
Where then later on, you're like, hey, do me a favor. Can you keep an extra set of eyes on this lecture? I want to try something that happens here. And then people, it also means that you have to be able to give good feedback. When you talk, you had mentioned that as well, where it's the timing is such an important thing on it. I'll see like in my opinion, a mentor error when someone's like just coached an hour class, super high energy, and as they're like thanking people and they're like, oh, by the way, they're like giving them feedback in front of other members, and it's like, I am not ready to receive that right now. Sure. It's going to be taken poorly, and it's going to put me in a situation where it's like, hey, give them,
Yeah, like we talked about. It's funny, in track and field in college, I was competing at a pretty high level for javelin, and I had a coach that I worked at that was an Olympic javelin thrower, and I used to travel to Yale, and he was like 5'6", and I loved the guy because he was my height, and I was like, dude, if you can do it, I can do it, right? That was like where my head was at. And there was one time he came back and gave me feedback right after a competition throw. I had taken first. I had my best throw of my life. I qualified for national championships at NCAAs. And he immediately gutted me. He goes, yeah, it was your best throw of your life, but you stopped in your tracks like when you were throwing, which is like a no-no, but still had my best throw in that process, right? And that feedback literally set me in a spiral. And it took everything I needed to like be in a good place to compete in 4 days, because that spiral then I overtrained. I overdeveloped everything I want to do. I overthought everything. It didn't become natural. And I think that, to your point though, is so key. It's so key to be super dialed in as a mentor, as a coach, to know when that feedback is, to identify where that person's energy is. Mm-hmm. Like, are they on that high? Wait till they're in a place where they're able to receive that, where it can also be constructive, but also wait for yourself to be able to put it in a legitimate feedback form for them to take it, digest it, and do something with it. Because that's the problem with most coaches. They don't know how to like take their desired feedback that they want to deliver and make sure it's designed and packaged up correctly for somebody to receive it and do something with it. Because what is feedback for otherwise? Like, you want to make sure, if you're a great mentor, that person leaves with something that's super knowledgeable, that's going to make them better at whatever their craft is. That's the only goal.
Yeah. I even think about it as in like relationships. It's like, think about an argument that you have with your significant other. And it's like, as soon as you want to bring something up, the first thing is like, it's like, defense. Like, I mean, why are you coming at me? All of this stuff. And especially me, I just had this with my girlfriend like 2 days ago. And I was like, hey, when you initially said this, I didn't respond because initially it was an angry thing is what I wanted to say. And then a little bit of time went by and you're like, you know what? You're absolutely right in this. And you weren't saying it to try to control me in this. You were saying it because this is genuinely something to improve. And it's like, yeah, that was good. But like, in the moment of it, and it was like right after I'd said something, and then it came right back at me, and it's like, why would you say, and it's like everyone's like coming at him with knives, and it's like, take that time. And it's in everything. This timing is such an important piece.
It's and it really is in the opposite. The rebuttal is also really important. Like to not want to rebuttal that feedback. That is so key for that success point, because so many people have a hard time just in that zone on that. Like, they'll get feedback and they're angry. And I always tell people in business, I'm like, write the email. Go ahead, write the email. Don't hit send.
Yeah.
Don't hit send. If in 2 hours from now you feel the same way, don't hit send.
Yeah.
The next day, then hit send if it still feels that way. But I will guarantee you would change everything if you could.
I do that same thing because I come in hot at times.
Sure.
And there are times that I'm like, you know what, this isn't what I need to do and this is not what I need to send right now. But I want some chaos in my life and send. But every single time I do that, the next day I was like, whoa, I was going to send that. I don't think that was probably the right thing to send. Like, Roger, that will do. Thank you.
It is kind of, like, it's funny because same thing happened to me today. Like, I got a long text message. I fouled up and left my son's jacket in my truck, his winter jacket, right? So my wife is like, hey, like, our son just got done being sick and I have to drop him off at school and you have his jacket. Thank you for making me look like a fool. And I was like, and I was like, I took a second and I was like, you know, you're 100% right. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. That is on me. I probably should have made sure his jacket was not in my truck. And it is.
I'd be willing to bet that her response after your response about that was a lot better received as well.
It was like, you don't have to apologize. I was like, no, but I'm really sorry. And she goes, no, I love you. And it was just that simple, like, piece. And you're like, again, it goes back to that immediate feedback of having empathy, having gratitude, and having that love and appreciation for the other person.
Yeah.
You can make mistakes, and yes, we will. Yes, we will, and that's okay. Sure. But if you own it and you're able to kind of move on, though it's like in the moment, you're like, this wasn't the right time to text me this. I'm like, how would she know that?
Yeah. And her, right, is probably in the same way where she has a realization of something happening, and it's like, there's frustration to get let out. And I find that whenever that happens to me in a situation where it's like, hey, the keys are locked and all this stuff, it's like that response is because they're in a stressful situation.
Yep.
So if I can defuse it, odds are then that initial reaction was like, I was a little bit harsh, I was just like frustrated. It's like, no worries. It's almost like, it's like the calm game. Who can stay more calm? Because if it's not the calm game, it's the aggression game. And who can be more aggressive?
Yeah, and then it's like not a male versus female fun point, but like it's so interesting. Like I find myself like pulling myself down to calm in chaos. Like that's natural for me. And it seems like it's almost natural for you in chaos to feel good, especially from your experience. And so it's like, at times when they're in chaos, I'm like, all right, let's take a deep breath. I think we can handle this. Why don't you do this and I'll get these things done. Yeah. Whether it's cleaning the house, accomplishing the kids, like taking care of them, whatever it is, there's so much feasibility in that aspect that we both, in a roles of a relationship, you each have certain roles to keep everything together.
Yeah. Just even talking about it from a training world and then into that, it's funny.
There's so many correlations. It's very interesting.
And it seems like if I were to be able to kind of put an umbrella over it all, it's just one's ability to communicate and giving feedback, giving coaching cues, being able to express how you feel to someone else as a coach, being able to properly communicate. Yep. And that's really the aspects of teaching. There's internal and external. And the internal is the knowledge, right? Yep. Your knowledge of craft. What do you know from anatomy and physiology? What do you know from a programming standpoint? All of that stuff. But what's more important than that is how do you take that wide body of knowledge and distill it down into small things that someone else can understand and communicate that?
Yeah, like simplify it. Like, we always hear that term, dumb it down, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I always hear sharpen your pencil. I hear all that kind of stuff. So for me, I do get into these realms where it's like, you're right. Communication is everything. And even whether it's business, whether it's working with your teams, whether it's training a class or dealing with your significant other, your kids, it all comes back to communication, and how you modify that communication for that audience is so important. But also your attitude, the energy you're giving off in that. Like for me, I've discovered in the years that is more important than actually the words I'm stating. Like,
it's not what you're saying, it's how you said it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's comical, but it is so true, man. And it's like, I realize that when you're on stage and you're teaching class and you're having fun, you're energetic and you're just enjoying yourself. And that's like, you're just high on life. You're way up there. But when you're at home and you're dealing with something, sometimes it's a little challenging, and you realize you have to take that immediate step back to recognize like where you're at and be like, all right, let me come at this a little bit different and let me bring the energy versus bringing it in reverse.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. when I talked about like the bad coaches, I had just like one coach come into mind, and I don't know if it's because I just think the guy's a dirtbag, but it was something that when we cut it down to like the very basis of what we're talking about in a good coach is that component of care, that intangible thing that you can't really teach. You know, you can't teach someone and be like, hey, you should care about this person getting fitness results, and they're like, fuck that, man. I just want to get a paycheck, and you're like, okay. You're not going to work well here, like that base component. And this coach that I had, this like little league into like a high level baseball coach, just like all he cared about was the trophy he was going to put in his closet, mortgage broker office. And it was like we would like pick up players from other teams instead of developing his own kids.
Sure.
He just always wanted the best, and you win sectionals and you go on to regionals or state or whatever that was. He had the ability to get some of the best players from other teams that wanted to keep playing. And I was like, there was no investment in his own people. And sure, maybe he had a nice state championship trophy in his office, but like it all ended up blowing up in his face in like this regional competition where all the parents were like, what are we doing here? And like the other kids who were all-star athletes, they're like, I don't want to, like, this is the person who you won state with. Yeah. Don't you want to like, and it was almost this like player revolt. We're like, this guy doesn't care about us. Yep. It doesn't matter how many trophies you have or how many people this guy has a 400 batting average and he was only 200 before I coached him. And you're like, you're not fun to be around, man. No one cares.
Yeah. And I mean, it's
Wendell.
I always laugh because how many movies were done up on that exact scene, right, of like what you're talking about? How many movies of that strong-minded coach that's getting rode off in the distance? I mean, the one that jumps in my mind is Varsity Blues.
Dude,
right?
I was just thinking the same thing.
Like, that's the one that jumps in my mind right away. It's
Kilmer.
Like, you just let him go. Like, let him go into that realm, in that direction. And that gives you everything you want to look at in an appropriate leader, appropriate coach, right? And in parents, even more from that side, you like the environment you put your kids in really matter. So the coaches, the people that they spend the most time with, school matters, but like, man, that environment you place them in matters. And that stuff, like, the more my children get older, the more I pay attention to that. The more I pay attention to that for myself, because who I spend the most time with is who I become. You morph into that naturally.
Yeah, that's cool to think of. Maybe cool isn't the right word, but I'm like picturing my daughter, and I'm so fortunate the people that she spends time around, and her teachers and the people that like care about her. And then going back to thinking about like the coaches and how it's like portrayed in each piece of it, and at some point in time it's going to come crashing down. The trainer who's like, I'm the best personal trainer out there. That's why you should come train with me. You're like, is it because you're the best, or do you have, you hear the person who's like, man, I'm so fortunate to work with these people who are absolutely dedicated and committed and making me look good. And you're like, oh, that's the person I want to be around.
Yeah, it's like, it's interesting. There's, when I started off in the industry, you had a lot of personal trainers that were top tier, right? Really great personal trainers. And what I found with these personal trainers is that they were massively educated, and they've been in it for a really long time, and they've done the things that like you look up to and you're like, you're brilliant. Like, you're absolutely brilliant. You could fix anybody and everything. You're a mix between, a fitness trainer but a physical therapist, right? And it's like, that's so cool. But they weren't your top producers. You had your other people that were your top marketers, the top salespeople. They're the one-to-one touch points. But they didn't really have that education, right? They were they were fantastic on the other side of it. And you still see that today. Like, where you'll have you see it more with the influencers, right? People that are massively in shape, really good on social media, really good in front of the camera, but what's their credentials? And should you really have 5,000 people buying programs off you to go ahead and get in shape? I don't know. Like, that's the biggest thing. And you see that left and right.
Yeah. What's the efficacy of your training? Like, sure, you may look a certain way, but again, social media only portrays so much. Sure. Whereas when we talk about like those in-person coaches, like those, like the Michael Jameses of the world, where it's like, oh no, we're watching what he's doing on a daily basis. He's in the gym training. He's working with his people. We see the fitness from his clients. It's not just a show. even though, he's got a great selfie game, especially in that yoga studio, just looking jacked. And sure, that's a part of it. And one of the things that I always get a lot of shit for is that I will stand firm with, if you are fit and in shape, you have a better advantage at being a better trainer.
Correct.
And if you are not, if you are overweight or you're not where you want to be from a physical standpoint, you can still be a great trainer. However, you are going to limit yourself on the amount of people that will walk through the doors to train with you because of XYZ excuse. And you know what? It may even be, if you're on your journey and you're working hard, that may be the motivation. But if you have that excuse, it should be something you're always in pursuit of, because it will open more opportunities. That really, really fit person that people are looking at that are motivated, it's like we should all be on that journey. Not to be like, hey, if you're not super fit, you suck. You don't. But in that, it's like we should all be on that pursuit. And if you live it and you do it and then people watch you, it's like that's your street cred. That's your credibility.
It is. I mean, I hate to say it's like window shopping, right? But in some ways it is, right? It's like you have to look the part or act the part in so many ways. And if you don't, there's not going to be people that are going to follow you, right? Because you're going to people want to go ahead and be like somebody. So they're going to look up to you. They're going to look at your age. They're going to look at what you've done. Yeah. They're going to go ahead and try to relate to you in some kind of way. And what they're doing is they're going to say I want to be more like this. I want to be more like that. And that's what motivates people initially to, I call it window shopping. But if they're looking at you and they're like, hey, I love the way that person looks, and I'm going to investigate whether or not I want to do training with them, then they're going to go ahead and dive into that. But if you don't look the part in any kind of way, or at least showcase that you're looking the part in any kind of way.
You're on the journey.
Yeah, you're on the journey, which I see all the time. People they fall off the bandwagon, they get back on, they're trying to do X, Y, and Z, which I love. But it's as long as you're showcasing that, it's fantastic.
Yeah, don't hide.
Yeah.
Don't hide when it's not there with filters and all the other stuff. If I were to make myself more effective as a trainer outside of continuing education, continuing to train people, my education will never be complete in that.
Sure.
And the more you learn, the more you understand you know nothing.
Yeah,
and
so much.
But what I would do is how I think I could be more effective from an outside perspective, from that window shopping, is I would get to 300 pounds and then I would lose 100 pounds to be where I am now.
Sure.
Because sometimes there's a point where people see that person and they say, they've always been like that. That's going to be genetic. And maybe that's the excuse person and that's going to be tough for them to get in. But when you have that person who's like, hey, here's exactly how I did it, it's like, oh, these are the people that really need help who are going to come in. And then if you're fortunate enough to be able to get that vicarious experience, so you can say, hey, I didn't lose 100 pounds, but this guy over here did, and we followed this program and template. So it's like, I don't want it to come across if you're not the fittest person, you're not going to be as effective as a trainer. But like you said, and what we've harped on, it's you've got to be on that journey. You've got to be open to, hey, I'm not where I want to be at, but I'm not hiding it. I'm not saying, hey, you need to eat an all paleo diet. We're going carnivore. You're going to go this vegan. And then I'm sitting there, stuffing my face with pepperoni pizzas.
Yeah, and I also think that in fitness, I think everybody thinks that we live this life of perfection, always perfection, right? Yeah. And my true and honest everything I talk to people about is I have different phases on my fitness journey, and I did in college and I did in high school, and depending on the sport, depending on where my energy was, and I think everybody does. And being okay with different segments of your life and where you are is really important. Accepting what you can do, adjusting so that you can handle what is necessarily in front of you is really important. And it's you might not be the fittest human you were in college, you're not walking around at 4% body fat, jacked up out of your treehouse and able to run through a brick wall. That's not going to be you in your 40s. More than likely, you have less than 1% chance to be that, right?
Yeah.
But what is that version of you? Is it, I like to enjoy a couple IPAs on a Saturday night and watch football and eat pizza and wings? Cool. That's great. All right. So how do we counterbalance that with, exercise and work? And how do we go ahead and add, like, do we want to go ahead and do the 30 by 30 by 30 every morning where you wake up 30 minutes and have 30 grams of protein and do 30 minutes of extended cardio under 135 beats per minute, which burns fat at the highest level? What is it that you would like to do? And it's like finding out what sacrifices you're willing to make in order to get to a place of, like, you're content in your current fitness journey, right?
Yeah.
And then know that that's where it is. And once you're there, consistency is just moving you forward. And sometimes it's making a choice to move you back, right? And I think that's hard for a lot of people, right? To, like, get to their extreme fitness level and then all of a sudden, like, be like, oh, I need to take a couple steps back. Like, to healthy take care of myself. I got here. I'm very happy. It was for my wedding. It was for X, Y, and Z. It was for a high rocks competition, whatever it is that you were doing. Learning to take that step back, learning to go ahead and eat, learning how to, like, rest that body and not look yourself in the mirror and be like, no, this is what I need to look like for the rest of my life. Yeah. That's never going to happen. Like, so you do have to, like, within that fitness journey as a trainer, as an individual, you have to recognize where you are in your life. You got to give yourself that appropriate feedback and some grace within that as well.
Yeah. You said it in there. It's like, true freedom is not being able to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
If you want freedom, you have to have discipline. You have to say, what am I willing to do in order to have this? And I've talked about this when people talk about, like, small wins, especially on, like, big weight loss journeys. And people are like, oh, well, after I lose 25 pounds, I'm going to have this meal as celebrating a small win. And you're like, what's your goal?
Yes.
If your goal is to lose 25 pounds and then fall off the wagon, you're like, yeah, do that. That's going to get you right where you want to be. But it's like, what are you willing to, are you disgusted with yourself when you look in the mirror? And again, people are like, well, you can't talk about this stuff. I'm like, if that's how you feel, you have to ask yourself. You
got to be honest with yourself.
Am I willing to sacrifice the things necessary? Am I willing to bypass my own bullshit excuses in order to get what I want?
Yep.
And if you're like, hey, this is how I am, I'm going to do a couple workouts to offset it, but I'm going to keep living my life this way. It's like, great, awesome. I can help you out there. But don't tell me that you're going to be like, hey, this is really what I want.
Yeah.
And then after X, Y, Z, you're not doing that because you're not willing to sacrifice that. And the worst thing you can do, not the worst thing you do, the worst thing you can do is never show up to a trainer. But a terrible thing you can do is have a trainer care about your results more than you do.
True.
Because it's going to strain the relationship when you do, have X, Y, Z. So it's the expectations, but do you have the discipline to do that stuff? And there's times when I'll have to have that conversation with people. They're like, hey, I saw you were drinking beers. And I'm like, yeah, there's, probably once every 2 weeks I have, like, a beer drinking day, and I've enjoyed that. And they're like, well, how come I don't get the beer drinking days? And it's like, well, you're still in weight loss phase in this stuff.
You're still in your phase.
So you have to have the discipline to be able to earn it. And it may sound rough or it may sound hard for you right now, but there is a truth that needs to come to that if that's what people want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than anything in life, right? There's an input, there's an output, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and I always talk to my clients, like Newton's laws are real. Like there's a push and pull. So it's like with any of these things, we have to recognize if we choose to have 10 beers on a Friday night, then whether or not you chose to have IPAs because you love them or you chose to have Mick Ultras, I mean,
Miller Lights because they're delicious.
Yeah, exactly.
Viva Tequila Seltzer, only 88 calories, zero sugar.
And it's like those are the things though, like that we love, and some people love to dive into that and enjoy those things, right? And I absolutely I'm for that. But with, like, to your point, with my clients, I often sit down and have, like, a real hard conversation. I'm like, all right, before I start working with you, we're going to build out a contract. The contract's going to state what you are going to accomplish and then what I'm going to accomplish. All right, I'm going to guarantee you X. If you do this, then I'm going to give you this. If you give me 80% of this, then more than likely I can only achieve like 20% of this. Like, that's it. Without your 100, I'm kind of giving you directions and barking orders, right? Which is not going to be super valuable. So I always come at it from, like, a contract point of view and be like, look, like, this is what you're going to need to do. And I build it out, like 12-week program, alignment with a goal, right? Make it specific, make it measurable, all that fun stuff. But then I say to them, like, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to remind you about mobility, flexibility on certain days. I'm going to, if you're on travel and any time during this 12 weeks, I'm going to give you workouts that you can do at a hotel room. I'm not going to give it up to you. I'm never going to give up to you in this 12 weeks. But if you give up on me, then we have a problem. Then we're going to go back to the starting point. And we're going to regroup and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I want you to be massively honest to me when you do have that problem. If I say we come to an agreement where you're going to drink once a week or you're going to have one cheat meal a week, I'm content if we agree on that, because I'm going to go ahead and change your outcome to align to those kind of requirements. And I think those are the things, when you're a great trainer, you take a look at somebody's life, their age, their situations, all of the things that come in, and you start to put something together that's realistic.
Yeah.
And it has to be realistic, because you don't want to set somebody up for failure. And I always tell people, I think there's a good book out there, that the One Thing, right? And that was one of my favorite books about like 3 or 4 years ago. But just making one change every day, and you would find success over across 365 days. And whether that was like you started off drinking 24 ounces of water first thing in the morning versus having your cup of coffee. That one change could be magnificent for you in so many categories.
Yeah.
And it's like just finding that one change every day, like in what is, like I always talk about, like one of the big changes I made a few months ago was sending gratitude posts like twice a week. And that was like so important to like send a message to close friends and whatnot to give gratitude. But those small changes, again, create ripple effects across our entire universe.
Yeah. It's powerful stuff. It's it's interesting when you talk about the contract, because I don't think I've ever gotten into the detail on that, but I could see kind of like how valuable it is, because when you have that knowledge base, and it drives me crazy on Instagram and all that stuff, where it's like, this is the way.
Yeah.
And everyone wants, this is the way. This is how you're going to do this. When obviously what we're talking about, which is a lot more efficacy and success in in-person training.
Yep.
Yeah, sure you have like the the weight loss. This is where they started, this is where they ended. You have 5,000 people do that, and you have 3 weight loss stories that are coming through that. Like, what's the efficacy in that? So it kind of sounds like it's a way. But when you have something where it's like, hey, what are you willing to balance out? Here's how we can make it sustainable. And maybe it starts off with, you have 3 cheat meals a week and X, Y, Z, and then after a couple of weeks, they're like, I'm getting results, but they're not as quick. I want more. And you give them that thing where it's like you're getting these wins, and it's not a celebration to do something like poorly. It's like, hey, you're doing these things, and you realize, hey, maybe I didn't need to drink soda.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have done like X, Y, Z. And it's like, it's such an approach saying, hey, here's a way. Here's what I will give to you in that, and then here are the likely results of what's going to happen to it. But we both have to be on the same page. And I can't tell you how many, truck drivers that I've been on tour with that are like, oh, I just eat salads. I just the way. And I'm like, dude, I saw you drink 3 sodas before you even ate. Like, don't lie to me about this. Or like, tell me just because I'm a fitness trainer that all you're eating are salads.
Sure.
When we know that's not true. Like, let's come to something. And if you can be honest with me,
honesty is so key. And that goes back to that communication piece, right?
Yeah. We don't have to change your whole world. Like, just because you don't want to give up sodas, you don't want to, you drink a 12-pack a day, that first thing we do might be an 8-pack a day.
Sure.
But if you're going to tell me you're not doing this, and then you're going to cold turkey cut all this stuff off or tell me you're going to do it, like, you're not setting yourself up for success. And you're not setting me up for success.
Exactly. There's not a chance. And leveling that, I think, is like what I often do, is recognizing where somebody currently is in the current moment, right? Where are you at right now? And so, like, most of the time with my clients, I'll get a full depth. I was like, I want a week snapshot of your workouts, when you're working out, your diet. Like, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm going to take a look at when you're eating, what you're eating, and I'm just going to look to understand your life in 7 days, all right? Because that's going to give me a really close snapshot of everything.
Yeah, don't you lie to me on there.
Yeah. And
I saw those Gardettos you were eating.
Exactly. But then you're taking it from there, right? And you're looking at fundamentally, like, what are the tweaks that we can make that's not going to be over the top? And how can we do a goal for 2 weeks? How can we go for a goal for 4 weeks? And I'm going to be honest with you. You're really like saying to me, like, hey, Dave, in 4 months, I have my wedding. I'm looking to lose 35 pounds. I'm like, yeah, your current lifestyle, unless you like live in the gym, is not going to work for you. It's just I can't get you here healthy. There are people that will get you here, but I won't do it because I'm going to ruin your metabolism and your body in the process, which is not where I want to go ahead and be, or not. I'm not putting my name on that either.
Yeah.
And I think there is people out there in the world that will do that. But I think it's like, coming to a relationship, an agreement on anything, when you starting to understand where somebody really is, not from what they're telling you they are, because 98% of the time I'll tell you that with my clients that tell me where they are, I'm like, yo, man, it's so much worse than that. Like, it's so much worse than that. Like, I just saw your social media from this weekend, and you had bottle service, and you were up until 3 a.m. in the morning. So didn't even see what you ate, but I can tell you ate. Like, I know that it's honestly real, and you got to be able to like kind of get a chance to be honest and real with that, and then create staging for them for success.
Yeah, I love it. I love like the contract stuff. I think it's definitely something where it's like, you minimize any of those slight errors or things that weren't. It's like, hey, like one, communication is key, but managing expectations too and I think that's such a good way to put it. Yeah, and you can do that. Like, I love doing it with prompts. So like I'll build out like certain prompts of like what is. Some of it I tell people like, tell me a pair of jeans that you would like to fit in that's still sitting in your closet that you're hoping one day that you can put on that you had in college, right? Yeah. And like, how far off are you from getting into that situation? They're like, 2 jean sizes, great. Like, cool, I want you to hang them on the door and they stay on the door. And on 8 weeks, we're gonna try those on. And I was like, if you stay consistent to what I'm saying, like, we'll 100% get you there. If you fall off track, we're gonna either have to make up those days or make up that situation in some kind of way, which is not gonna be fun. It's gonna be massively uncomfortable. And it's gonna involve like long extended cardio with uncomfortable situations and hard circuit trains and that kind of stuff. But like, if we do this, we can actually do this fairly easy and get you that place where you can, go on your cruise and feel good about yourself. Like, and whether that is making sure your significant other like looks at you with an awe, like they did when they were in college, like that is often what happens. Yeah. That's awesome. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, whether it's for training or whether it was for just contact from social medias, how would someone get a hold of you? Yeah, best thing I always tell people is feel free to reach out, david@everybodyfights.com. Social media, it's just Bergeron_EBF. Those are 2 easiest ways to kind of get a hold of me through that. Yeah, very easy. Where are the gyms located at? We are located at 25 Dry Dock in the Seaport District, and then we're over at 1 Federal Street at our FiDi location. Amazing. And if someone was like, hey, I just want to take a class, sign up online, go into the gym or a couple minutes before the class, go pop it out, go take a tour. Yeah, real easy on that too. I would just go to everybodyfights.com. From that, you will see the free class link. You click on that, you can immediately create a profile. You'll get a class uploaded in 2 seconds for you, and you can just pick and choose. Within that process, somebody will reach out to you via SMS and be able to like, hey, how can I help you? What are your next steps? What are you interested in doing? Since we have 5 studios, there's a lot that goes on. And you look at our class schedule, like 150 classes a week, you're gonna be like, how do I orchestrate? What do I choose? They'll help you in that direction and make sure that you get to that first stage of where you want to be. Yeah, that's awesome. And if you somehow can't figure that out, you guys can always email me, Connor@bignight.com, or on Instagram, Big Night Fitness, where we get the opportunity to highlight brands and companies and trainers that are coming from these places like EBF. Super fortunate and grateful to have you on here, and I think we need to do it more consistently. That like the second half conversation about just like the personality. I feel like I learned so much about that because I relate it to a training world, but even just like the environment we're putting our kids in and that stuff is just incredibly useful information. And I think that hopefully our listeners at least have something to where they can start taking steps in their journey to improve the quality of life through fitness. Absolutely. Big night. And Connor, thank you very much for having me on. This is fantastic. It was great to kind of share and tell stories and have a little bit of fun. Hopefully we do more in the future. Hell yeah. Thanks brother.